Hey, yay, I think we are live today. Yes, we are. Welcome, everybody, to Free Friday. Welcome to all of you who are our replay viewers watching on the recording. You're going to want to stick around today because today on our Free Friday series, we're going to be talking about how to play your way to healing. And so let me turn down my volume on my phone here. Thank you guys for joining us. I have an exciting guest joining me today, and we're going to be able to talk with Nancy Williams. She is a licensed professional counselor specializing in play therapy and also some specific challenges with regards to childhood trauma. And I'm so excited that she's joining today. I'm going to make sure you guys can see and hear okay. So if you're joining live, let us know where you're joining in from. Today I'm joining you from Cajun land. We are just outside of New Orleans, Louisiana, and Nancy is joining me from back in the Houston area. So thank you for joining us today, Nancy. And Nancy and I connected many moons ago through her daughter, her sweet daughter, Suzanne, when Suzanne and I were singing in a band together, believe it or not. and over the years, I've enjoyed getting to know Nancy even better and just gleaning so much from what she's learning, from what she does professionally as well. And so I'm so excited to have her on with us today because today, we're going to be talking about, in fact, those of you who are new to our Facebook channel, my name is Amy Miller. I'm the founder and wellness advocate for 3 Life Essentials. My husband and I are passionate about helping others feel better naturally. People call me a research queen, and I love seeking out and learning new things. People know and trust that when they come to me, they know they're getting sound advice because it's been really researched and well thought out. So you come alongside with me today, and we're going to seek to provide healing to our bodies and have a better 2019. We're going to be talking with Nancy Williams today, and we're going to be talking about what is play therapy and why you may want to seek out a counselor or a therapist, when that might be a good time to do that. But today we're going to be free to be heard, free to play, free to heal. And so I'm so excited that you guys are joining us today. Good to see you on here, Bill and Janie. Good to see you guys here. Thanks for joining us. So now, if you're watching this and you have some friends or family that come to mind as you're watching this, just click on the bottom, click that share button and share that with them so that they can also have their best 2019 this year. So, now, Nancy, I mentioned before, is a licensed professional counselor specializing in play therapy. And, she said that she works with families and particularly children and adolescents. She also is very fascinated with the use of essential oils and the emotional development of them. Her research right now at this time mostly involves the brain and injury to the brain, at what age, and really just some vital tools with therapeutic methods and interventions that use the application of essential oils and what she believes could be a really vital tool during those formidable years. And that's what she is primarily focusing on right now. So, so welcome to you, Nancy. So I'm curious, tell me a little bit about what play therapy is and what is it and why is it such a big deal?
Play therapy is the use of play, which can be in many different areas. It can be in the kinesthetic area where you play with their, dolls, or you play with trains, or you play with blocks, or whatever you may do. What it is the individual child choosing what it is that is inside of them that they want to play through. If you've ever watched children in the early ages, they'll sit and play with things and they'll talk with them, or they'll talk with dolls, or they'll talk with the trains, or how they're going to do something. They are, in effect, working through whatever's going on inside of them because, of course, their their verbiage and knowledge of verbs or words does not coincide with the adult world yet, but they can play through that in play.
Hmm.
Now, there's another area called sand tray, and that is excellent for, and I use it with adults. I use it with families. It is literally a tray of sand, and there's three different kinds of sands that I use. Anyway, and all kinds of little figurines from a brick, a wall, an animal, a tree, a person, whatever it may be, whatever it could be, but lots of little figurines. And what the child or the adult or the adolescent does is present, perform, well, not perform, draw a picture in the sand with the figurines. Now, during this time, they may talk or they may not. Adults, when they come to me and they cannot express themselves, it may be something or a form of PTSD or whatever trauma may have happened to them. They can sit and draw something. And I've had adults do this like for 5 sessions in a row, 5 weeks in a row. And I have seen a progression of a house, perhaps, that was surrounded by a fence with little stones leading from it to a beautiful pond or something else. As that progressed in the weeks, the fence around the house disappeared and the stones became more direct towards the forest or the lake or whatever it was, and the house began to have beautiful flowers around it. It progressed more, and then there was another place that was added to that sand tray that the path, if you want to call it, with the stones, went on over to, and it was a beautiful home. So that tells me as a therapist what's happening within this adult, that she is allowing or he is allowing whatever's keeping them inside, their emotions, what's happened, that they're able to begin to express it, maybe not verbally, but in picture form. We use art therapy, we use dance, we use movement, we use music, a lot of different things of expressive arts. I'm also known as an expressive arts therapist. Does that answer some of your question about that?
Yes, and that's fascinating. And I'm hearing what you're talking about, the play therapy, and really just thinking about how that resonates with my background in speech language pathology, because those who work in any kind of developmental realm, we realize the value of play in general with kids, that it's not just play, right? That we think of as just kids messing around, but that actually there's so much value in it, that you're demonstrating even from the emotional aspect. But that just reminded me too, it's so, there's so much learning happening through play, that it's really like kids, part of schooling, part of learning is through that play too. So I love that you shared that. So well, I have a question from one of our viewers that I would love to share with you as well. And if you have a question as you're watching live, or even if you're watching on the replay, if you have a question that you would like to ask that comes up during this broadcast, feel free to comment below, or you can even private message me and I can pass this on to Nancy. So this is a question that was asked by a family that that recently lost a child to SIDS, a baby to SIDS, and this is regarding the older sibling in the household during the time that this happened, the parent has pictures of the child that passed away with SIDS everywhere in the home, everywhere, just kind of almost like a shrine or a memorial, but every area. And some family members are seeing that as being a lot. And this person is wondering, is that harmful to the older sibling, maybe recovering or from the loss? I don't know. What are your thoughts on that?
I'm sitting here thinking about the area, as I just mentioned, of sand tray. And many times having something in front of you, that's wonderful. You don't want to ever forget that person. But for the family itself, it would be great for them to get together and either verbalize or go through Santray or go through art therapy, something that they can express and talk about the memory of the child, but giving the other siblings in the family the attention and pride and love and so forth, and say, and incorporating, let's work together to move forward. And so far as all of the pictures, I don't know what they are or what they included, if they included other people in the family. That person's memory is never going away. It's always going to stay in the heart. How that is dealt with, and then you have to add. You don't have to. Excuse me. That's a teacher coming out of me. But then then a good thing to do is to ask yourself, what if that baby had grown? What would they have wanted? Would they have wanted us to mourn her or him for the rest of their lives, or do they want us to honor them by moving on with our lives and giving others the opportunity to know what it's like to move through grief? Now, if there are grief counselors who can do that, I would use expressive arts because that's what I do. But I think that is a very important part of their family relationship to grow and to move forward, to help them understand what, quote, grief is and how to deal with it.
Mm. I think it's true. We all have a tendency to know that obviously when there's a loss of a child, there is a grief process. But when you're actually in it yourself, I think it's a little bit harder to recognize where you are in it and are you moving through those stages. So that brings me to the question: when would you say is when is a time that a person would be a good time for them to seek a counselor or seek your services, that kind of thing?
Grief is different for everybody, and everybody deals with grief differently. If the parents are able to release that, I don't know their faith, I don't know what how they perceive things like that in their faith, but when they can allow that to be a part of their growth process spiritually, or as a family, as parents, or whatever, and when they are ready, if they just go panicking on to a counselor, no, they need to seek that kind of help for a reason. We need to move on and help our family to grow and move past this. Not to ever forget that child. No, 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 no. But how can we honor that process? How can we move forward? And if they are Christians, what can God do? What is it that He says, and how can He help us through this? I hesitate to talk about Christianity because many people do not go that direction. Again, it is they have to, I would say this, when the parents, if they can do this, if they can look at their family as a whole, if they can step back and look at the forest, so to speak, instead of the trees, and see what's happening in their family. Is there some kind of withdrawal? If there's some kind of anger, is there some kind of continued crying or just silence? Then each child or each person is or separation. Sometimes men and sometimes women and husbands and wives begin to separate. And if they can recognize that, it is time to go seek some help to help them come back and come back together.
Okay, that's a good word. So you mentioned your faith and Christianity. How does your faith, how do you feel like your faith helps you in counseling and in your sessions with people? Is that something that helps you greatly?
If I didn't have my faith, I wouldn't be a counselor. God called me to do this many years ago, and He started preparing me for it many years before that, because I have a love for children. And at one point in time, back in the late 90s, I asked Him, please, Lord, give me the children. So now I have learned about many different areas of how to help children, how to watch them, how to observe them. I've gone through a few degrees, music therapy. I'm not they call me a music therapist, but I have a degree. I have a master's in music, and I use a lot of kinesthetic, and I use a Howard Gardner's modes of learning, if you will. The way I taught music, I don't just sit down and give them a book and say sing. No, we play games and we move. We do drama. We do a lot of different things. And then I began to study the brain. And then I've learned so much from that. And then in my faith, I keep saying, okay, I walk into a session, you're asking me this, I'm going to tell you the truth. I pray before every session over the family, and I go in and I pray over the room. And I pray with them if they will allow me to do that. I pray for their specific needs, and I give them scriptures that God has given me to give them or has taught me through my experience. This is what will work for you if you believe it and walk in it. Because I believe that the Bible is not only a book, it is a way of life, and that to learn from it and to live it and to walk in it, then you will have success. That's what he says, and I don't believe he lies.
It sounds like God has given you great wisdom as well in how you're approaching how you help families. So I love that. Thank you for sharing that. I'm curious, what are you seeing? You mentioned the brain and you're studying with the brain. What are you learning about that aspect?
This is the most fascinating thing I think I've come across. And I'm so grateful to the Lord for getting me to this point that I can understand it a whole lot better. I'm learning that the brain, this is Dr. Bruce Perry's work out of the Child Trauma Academy here in Houston. And the brain has 4 separate sections that are developed from in utero. The first part is the brain stem, which to us would be the same thing like the foundation of a house or a building or whatever. It is the foundation. And whatever and I'm talking with my hands, I'm glad you can't see them. And where the neurons and the dopamine, all of this is connected in the synapses. There are formed the basic emotions are formed in the brainstem, and then so far as attachment is concerned, I'm sure you've heard that word before. Mm-hmm. Attachment. Now, as an example, let me just give you a quick example. If the child was neglected, either they had during in utero, the mother was a drug addict or whatever, or she had a lot of beating or whatever happened to her, anger, whatever, or even after the baby was born and maybe she didn't really want the baby or whatever, and she didn't pay attention to the crying and so forth, especially in children that are adopted. But if the needs, because the only communication a child has when it's born is to cry, that's it. You don't know how to speak. So also, when that person comes to see what's matter, instead of just looking at it and say, what do you want? Or that it's the tone of voice that is accepted or rejected. It is the eye contact that is so very important, that has to be there, because this new being in this world is looking for who's taking care of me, who loves me, who's going to pick me up. Is no one picking me up? Is no one doing this? In that process, those emotions that are being developed at that time of attachment begin to shrivel that dendrite, that synapse, because it's got to go on to the limbic system, the diencephalon, pardon me. And the diencephalon has synapses and neurons waiting for these connections. If something injures these right here and they can't, well, then this just kind of withdraws. Now, that doesn't mean that it can't be corrected. No. The brain is very neuroplastic, has a lot of neuroplasticity. So that can be corrected. Now, if that is recognized, then a therapy or a mode of therapy or something can be interjected there, and all that can be healed and begin to be healed. If it's connected, it begins to heal. Then we go on up to the limbic and the cortex and those things that can begin to grow emotionally and well. Now, I'm going to interject this. My next research, which I started working back in the history of the Bible, in Exodus, about oils. Fascinating. You ought to read Exodus 30, 23, 24, and 25 in the Old Testament. It's wonderful what they used in the oils and tabernacles. Anyway, when that happens,
I'm jotting that down.
Okay, it's Exodus 30, 23 and Exodus 30, 34. The oils that were used to anoint the tabernacle and the priest, and then I wrote down what each one of them did. And then there was the incense that was burned, and that was Exodus 30, 34. That oil included frankincense, by the way, I think. Yeah, frankincense, some I can't even don't know how to pronounce. But anyway, that was the incense that was burned 24 hours a day. Okay. But all of that God provided in the Old Testament. And then there's others. I mean, I found cassia. I found, let's see, myrrh, cinnamon, and let's see, myrrh, cinnamon, oh, and calamus. Those were the ones with olive oil as the carrier oil, and how much was used. I mean, there's like, I had to look up the word shekel, and so far as measurement was concerned, absolutely fascinating.
Yes.
Yes, it really is. So then I come back, I say, okay, if that's used then, when we find anything of injury in the baby or a 2-year-old, particularly because the brain isn't fully developed until the age of 5. So in all those ages of development, if we find the injury along with the therapies such as music and movement and EMDR and whatever one you want to use, play therapy, and find the oils that can be used for those emotions that are being caused by those injuries, and work all this together, somehow, somewhere, it's all going to come together. I do believe very, very strongly in my heart. I know that doTERRA is doing a lot of educational research on about oils and various ages and various things that are happening. And it's just exciting to me to know that it's all been there in the Bible. You know, it's all there.
Yes, that God really did think of everything when he
did. I mean, and even when he was building the tabernacle, if you go back and read that, he knew who to call to do the stitching, to do this, and what purple, you know, what color, what kind of stitching, all kinds of stuff. I'm sorry, I'm rambling a little bit. So I apologize for that, but it's exciting to me to know that the development of the brain, the emotions that are helping either being injured or developing, the biblical background of that, and then going along with the therapies that have been given to various and many different people about play therapy, sand tray, EMDR, whatever it may be used, and coming together. The scientific community and behavioral community have just really started to come together in the last 20 years. You know, it's all this way and this is way. But now they're coming together. And now I just learned a few weeks ago that the state of Texas is looking for laws to help provide care more than what we've got for our children. So in the area of trauma, and I could go on, but that you didn't ask me all that. So
that's fascinating. Well, so you mentioned oils. What do you see as your goal with utilizing essential oils or doTERRA in what you're doing, or what are you foreseeing happening with what you're doing with doTERRA?
Okay, let me give you a little background a little bit. Now, I did go ahead and get this book. Okay, that's the 2017 Emotional on Emotions.
So what is that book for our viewers in case they don't have that book?
It's Emotion and Essential Oils. Let me put it's the 2000, it's the 7th edition. It's a reference guide for emotional healing. And it's 7th edition, 2018, Essential Emotions, LLC. Anyway, it was from Aroma Tools, and then also Amazon had it. But last weekend, or MLK Day, I got it on sale at Aroma Tools, so I thought that was great.
Oh, fantastic!
But let me go back just a minute. When we learn what emotion is being damaged or has been injured, and when we learn that, because let me tell you, studying NMT, which is the Child Trauma Academy phase that I'm working in right now, you do a complete history on the in utero, it's like a village. It takes a village to raise a child. You talk to, and you get all the history as far back as you can, as much as you can, to see where or what, and then there's a metric and a graph and everything that is done to see where the injury is, how it compares to a typical child that age, and then go from there. Then you see, okay, what therapy can we use for this at that age? Then I want to learn, and I want to look at what oil can help with that therapy for that injury at that age, because we're looking at neglect, we're looking at let's see, what was I looking at this morning? I was looking at Cassie, I think. Anyway, we're looking at withdrawal. We're looking at anger. We're looking at non-focus. we're looking at all the things that I have learned, which is not nearly as much as you have, about oils and the emotions and the things that affect us, how to focus and how, because when Dr. Perry talks about the damage to those parts of the brain, he mentions ADD, ADHD, if we can catch it early enough. And the earlier these things are discovered, the better chance they have of completely being restored. They can be, no matter what age it is, it can be helped, and it can, and that's good. But if you can get it back, it's just like anything else. It's like, as like Caroline Leaf says, it takes 21 days to change, but really it takes 63 for it to take effect. And she's another marvelous person if you ever want to read her books. She's a neuroscientist, and she makes it come back to where the Bible is.
Yes, I love her work. Yes. Love her book. We've been reading that. And hopefully our community, we can be doing, so we're thinking about doing a book study on one of her books coming up. Yes.
Okay, let me just bring another one if you're really interested in play, and if somebody is. There is a book called The Interpersonal Neurobiology of Play. It looks like this. I don't know if you can see that.
Interpersonal Neurobiology of Play. Okay.
And it's by Teresa, Theresa, Kestly, Kestly. And she pulls Jaak Panksepp's and Dan Siegel's research together with Dr. Perry's research, and all of it that she acknowledges or gives the credit to began like in 1997, 2010, 2012, all of it coming together. It's very fascinating to see how the brain development and the emotion development comes together, which then brought me to, okay, what can doTERRA do for that? How can doTERRA play into that? Which I believe it can. And I know you would. So getting that together along with Caroline Leaf, God's Word, that's where I am right now. That's what I want to study right now.
Yes, yes. I love that. Well, how can somebody connect with you if they have more questions, or if they want to seek out counseling, if they're in the Houston area? How could they connect with you, Nancy?
I have a telephone number that I will give. It is my personal phone. It's the only one I have at this moment.
Well, since it's your personal number, would you prefer somebody just commenting below, and then we can send them that information to them privately?
That would be a good idea. I will tell you now, I just come back from an assignment in South Texas, where now I do not have an office yet. I'm kind of working on that. And my schedule is very flexible at this point. I have a possibility of an office. I just haven't made the final you have to have clients, to pay for an office and all that. Well, yes. And I know I will. God has given me the time, and I know He still has work for me to do. So they can leave a comment with you, and however you and I can connect to help. I do have an email address that, well, I'll let you. Your suggestion is good.
All right. So what we'll do is if you would like to connect further with Nancy, why don't you just comment below, whether you're watching live or on the recording later. Why don't you just comment below with play? Comment below with the word play, and we will give you that way. That'll let us know that you want her information. We can send that to you directly. We can send that to you, and then you can be able to connect with Nancy further. Well, any last final thoughts that you'd like to share with everybody, Nancy, or something that you want everyone to do moving forward from what they've learned now?
I hope I've been able to give some information and maybe some prompting of wanting to learn about emotions and the brain and doTERRA and the Bible, all of that together, and to be more aware. Here's one comment that just I thought of, one thing. Many times adults talk to children in the words and verbiage they believe the child can understand. Please be aware that if a 2-year-old or a 3-year-old is being directed to and not talked with, you may not be able telling them what you think you're telling them. Give them a chance to come back and either give them something to play and show you, but be aware of their age and where they are in their development, please.
That's good. Good for final thoughts. Um, Thank you so much for joining us today, Nancy. I appreciate you coming on and sharing some of your world in play therapy and your knowledge and expertise with us. And we're going to sign off. We're going to join back next week. We have another interview next week with Dr. Teresa Scott. She is our holistic dentist that we have been working with, also in the Houston area, and she's going to be sharing with us some fascinating things that I have been learning through regarding the airway and epigenetics and what mouth breathing has to do with that and what that has to do with my family and even my background as a speech language pathologist. We can find all of that out together next week, and we're going to be hearing more from her about what she has been learning over the last year and how it's totally shifted her entire dental practice. So you're not going to want to miss that. We'll be doing that next Friday. Thank you again for joining us, Nancy, and we'll see you guys next week. Bye-bye.
Thank you.